Okay, listeners, as I said to you prior to that song, that we would hopefully be speaking to Ken Park, and I'm delighted to advise you that we actually have the Vice Chairman of the Reclaim Caboolture Shire Incorporated, Mr. Ken Park, on the line. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, Rosemary.
Well, now listen, I'm sure that the weekend's results in Douglas, Livingston, Mareeba and Noosa might have pleased you. Am I correct in assuming that?
Well, it was a great victory. Those four shires have gained their freedom, but it's a greater victory for democracy. You know, the amalgamations were totally undemocratic. The people never had a say. Well, finally they're having a say, and those four have won their freedom. And the question then it must be asked, what about Caboolture?
What about Caboolture, Ken?
Well, you know, back in the days of Beattie and Bligh, they had report after report and consultant after consultant, and they demonstrated that Caboolture was viable and sustainable, and those are the requirements for independence. And of course, Caboolture had been independent for 130 years, so they must have been doing something wrong. But on every basis that they might like to compare us, we are better than Noosa and those other three shires. We have lower borrowings, lower rates, we have less staff to population ratio, better liquidity, better assets, better customer service satisfaction surveys. And I'm sorry if I'm going on too much, but
no, Ken.
Compared to Noosa, for example, we have 3 times the population, 3 times the income, we have greater diversity of industry, and the potential for growth out in the west of Caboolture, you know, there'll be another Brisbane out there one day. So there's no question that Caboolture is viable and sustainable, but the government won't face up to that. For some reason they're holding us back.
Ken, I do believe that the people were able to put in submissions, weren't they? And did our area put many submissions in regards to de-amalgamation?
I can't speak for anybody else. We certainly didn't put any in. We took the view that, you know, it's not for us to prove to the government that this area is viable and sustainable, because they had all those reports that they did.
Yes.
And it's not for us to produce numbers to say that we have the people behind us, because they did the plebiscite. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yes. 3/4 of the people of the Moreton Bay region said no, they did not want amalgamation. Now, nothing has changed. We've proved that at Noosa and the other 3 shires.
Yeah.
So the results of the plebiscite are still valid, and there's been no other vote other than this one on Saturday to demonstrate otherwise. The people do not like the amalgamated councils.
No. Ken, may I ask, how much is this going... Perceiving that Caboolture will go back to Caboolture Shire, how much is it likely to cost us?
Interesting question. Because when the Minister for Local Government and the 4 amalgamated councils, you know, the regional councils, were opposing this vote on Saturday, they had only one argument, and that was the cost of the de-amalgamation. They called it unscrambling the egg. And you know where they get the costs from?
No.
Well, they were figures produced by Queensland Treasury Corporation, and at the bottom of their figures, this is what Queensland Treasury said. Yep. They said that Queensland Treasury Corporation has not independently verified the information in this report, so it should not be relied upon as being accurate and complete. Now, these are the figures that the Minister and the mayors of the regional councils were throwing at everybody, trying to scare the daylights out of them about the amalgamation. The figures are not been verified by Treasury because they didn't produce them. I won't tell you who produced them. They're not accurate because all they gave is one side of the equation, that is the costs, but the benefits were never mentioned, you know. Now, we've done some very rough sums, and I couldn't verify them as yet. We're getting some experts to work on them. But when we come to our turn for de-amalgamation and we get a vote, there will be some figures on the table which will be produced by some experts of our own, which will show that on day one we will have a huge saving from de-amalgamating. That will continue on, and say after about 5 years, when the new council gets our borrowing down to a reasonable figure and gets rid of Unity Water, I think we'll be saving something like $15 million a year. Now, don't quote me on that.
No.
Well, you have, because we're on air. But, when the experts go through it and look at the benefit side, it'll be a totally different equation. And, if they come up and start telling you that, oh, yes, it's going to cost you millions and millions, think very carefully and have a look at the figures that we're going to produce. We're not going to produce them till we get the vote. And once we do, those figures will be on the table.
Listeners, I'll just interrupt Ken right now. I'd like the listeners to know that we are speaking to the Vice Chairman of the Reclaim Caboolture Shire Incorporation, Mr. Ken Park, and Ken is giving of his time to give us a bit of an idea of what's going on in regards to reclaiming Caboolture, if in fact that does occur. And thank you, Ken. Keep going.
It's been a great pleasure, and thank you very much for giving us your time, Rosemary.
Yeah, well, let's hope that if this is what the people want, and I think you've marked out the benefits there.
Let me say the final thing, that you'll notice I have not once criticised Moreton Bay Regional Council this morning, nor have I corrected any statements made by the Mayor.
No.
I'm going to leave that to the people to do. I think if you listen to the people around this council area, you'll hear the criticisms. You don't need me to make them.
Ken, do we need those people to make those their feelings felt to our local members?
Yes. Certainly the local member that we've been dealing... There are 4 local members.
Yes.
But the one we've been dealing mostly with has been Lisa France.
Yes.
And she has said quite categorically that the only thing that will sway her and the minister are numbers. And if people write into her, telephone her, email her, then they will take notice.
Yes, and that's all they can really do, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
And basically, we've got to turn Mr. Crisafulli, the minister, to make him change his mind. The local members will do it when enough pressure's put on them. They will put pressure on him. Okay. We have written to him. In fact, I've gone over his head and written to the Premier, and so have many of our members. It's just unbelievable that they're holding Caboolture back.
Ken, thank you very much for your time this morning. Listeners, that's certainly given you something to think about, and if need be, can people contact you directly?
Yes. Look, we have a website, which is probably the best way to learn a little bit about it, and there's an application form if they'd like to join us. It's only $5.
Yep.
That's called www.reclaimcabooltureshire Inc., all one word.
Yes.
reclaimcabooltureshireinc.com.
.com.
Yes. Now there's some email addresses and phone numbers and an application in that, so that's probably the easiest way to learn a bit more about it.
All right.
And get in contact.
Ken, thank you very much for your time, and listeners, I hope you appreciate the work that Ken is doing, if in fact you think along the same lines as he does. I will thank you again, Ken, and I'll go off to some more music, and we'll look forward to seeing what happens, hey?
Thank you a lot.
Thank you now. Bye-bye.